It is that time of the week when Stephanie Dobson joins us. Stephanie is a lawyer, mediator, and online educator with Hanka Divorce Law and Mediation offices in Edmonton and here in Lloydminster. Stephanie, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks again, Stacey, as always. Nice to be here.
This is a very interesting subject we have this week. We're going to be talking about prenuptial agreements. So first of all, let's start off with the first question. What is a prenup?
Well, in Canada, discussions about marriage often bring up the concept of a prenuptial agreement, also called prenups. These documents sometimes can be viewed negatively, but they really serve as a practical tool to protect both partners in the event of a separation or divorce. So a prenuptial agreement, what is it? Specifically, it's a legally binding contract that's entered into by a couple before they get married. So it outlines how things will look in the event of divorce, how things will look in the event of separation or even death, and to help set out clear expectations and reduce conflicts later on. So if you do separate, then it sets out those clear expectations. So in Alberta, an agreement entered into prior to a marriage is called an adult interdependent relationship agreement. It's quite a mouthful. And in Saskatchewan, such an agreement is called an interspousal agreement. So although today we are talking technically about prenuptial agreements, technically an agreement can be entered into any time prior to a separation or divorce. So even if the spouses are already married, they can enter into one of these agreements between them.
And what's the purpose of a prenuptial agreement?
Well, there's really four key purposes. So one is the asset protection, so protecting wealth that has accumulated prior to or may accumulate during the relationship. It also can allocate debt responsibilities, so it can clarify to make sure that neither party is unfairly burdened with the other's financial obligations. It can also talk about inheritance rights. So that might be something that people don't often think about, but couples with children from previous relationships might want to talk especially about inheritance issues, how those will be handled, and safeguarding family assets for future generations. And then lastly, clarifying expectations. So these contracts can often set out financial expectations and other types of expectations and responsibilities of spouses during marriage, before marriage, at any time during the relationship, and it really helps to reduce misunderstandings.
Can you talk a little bit about the legal framework?
Oh, how boring, Stacey, the legal framework. But it is really important to talk about that, because if you are entering into a legally binding contract, you really want to make sure that when you go to rely on this agreement, whether that's on separation or divorce or death, you want to make sure that, of course, it's in fact enforceable. No point otherwise to enter into this agreement. So legal requirements. So to be enforceable, a prenuptial agreement must be entered into in writing and signed by both parties. And it's recommended that you get independent legal advice so you have all the signatures that are required. Full disclosure. So this is one that is often not thought of. So not only do you have to talk about, tell each other what you have, but you have to prove it. So full disclosure. So all your bank accounts, investment statements, credit card statements, mortgage statements, asset worth, maybe business valuations or house appraisals. So full disclosure. Fairness. So the terms of the agreement must be fair at the time of signing. An agreement that is deemed what's called unconscionable or heavily biased towards one party may not be enforceable. And then lastly, it's really important that in the event that you do need to modify the agreement after marriage, you certainly can do that. You just need to make sure that you follow the proper legalities for that.
And Stephanie, what are some of the common components of a prenuptial agreement?
So, Stacey, a well-drafted prenuptial agreement will typically include 5 things. First, division of property. So, and that's usually what's thought of when we talk about prenuptial agreements, as the division of property. Debt responsibility, spousal support. So, duration, amount, whether spousal support will be applicable in that particular case, handling of future assets, and then, of course, dispute resolution. So in the event that you can't agree at the end, we might want to go through mediation or even arbitration.
What would be some of the benefits of having a prenuptial agreement in place?
Well, my experience is that prenups are really hard to negotiate or couples find them really hard to negotiate because they're trying to do two things at the same time. One, they're trying to protect themselves, and number two, they're trying to protect the relationship at the same time. So, but a well-drafted agreement, which is really well thought through, can have a lot of positives. It can give you peace of mind. So it really helps you to feel secure in your financial rights and reduces anxiety about the future. It can really help to spark some good open communication. So a lot of times these prenuptial agreements, or the terms of the prenuptial agreements, will spark really important discussions about finances and then expectations within the marriage. And it can also reduce conflict during the relationship, but also at the end of the relationship.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Stephanie. We will be back to have another discussion next week.
Sounds good. Thanks, Stacey.